Ceuta, Spain, July 30th, 2026. A woman films from her window at home and can only repeat the same phrase. My God, my God.
My God.
My God, dear God.
Down there, a line of people covers the entire breakwater and moves out to sea. Hundreds of people swimming around a fence that ends in the water. In the next 24 hours, 50,000 people are going to enter this city. A city that has 83,000 inhabitants. And here's the detail that almost nobody noticed. This is the most protected border in Europe. It has 6-meter fences, radars, thermal cameras, patrol ships, and none of that was breached. No gate was forced open. No shot was fired, because that border was already open. And the one who opened it wasn't who you think. On that Thursday, the fence that goes down to the sea was covered with people. Hundreds of people climbing the structure, going over it, jumping to the other side. And in the water, dozens of dark spots moving forward slowly. People swimming to get around the tip of the breakwater. It's 10 kilometers across open water. 4, sometimes 5 hours to make the crossing. Many crossed on inner tubes. People who couldn't swim well. And the summer fog of Ceuta, which the locals call taro, became an ally. It hid the swimmers from the patrol boats. Dozens of people lost their lives on that crossing. The official counts vary, but victims kept being found on the beaches days later. And those who managed to make it celebrated. Crowds running with their fists raised. People still dripping with seawater. Now, pay attention to a detail in these images. They run past agents of the Guardia Civil. And look what happens. The agents just watch. Armed men, trained, on duty, standing completely still. And then the question arises, why doesn't anyone act? Hold on to it, because the answer is at the heart of this story. First, you need to understand why Ceuta became the gateway. Look at this map. Ceuta is a piece of Spain, embedded on the coast of Africa, right next to Morocco. It's Spanish territory and therefore European Union territory. In other words, anyone who steps on that sand has legally set foot in Europe without crossing the Mediterranean by boat. For that reason, for decades, migration pressure from Africa has always been concentrated there and in that other city, called Melilla, which is also part of Spain. And that's the reason that the Spanish turned Ceuta into a fortress. But this fortress had a secret. The truth is that what held that border was never steel. There were 2 invisible gears. Can you imagine what those gears are? The first one is what I would call immediate return. Look, until then, anyone caught entering would be sent back to Morocco on the same day. This happened without any process, without paperwork. Getting in wasn't worth it because you wouldn't get to stay. The second mechanism was a paid gatekeeper on the other side. Over the years, Spain and the European Union have transferred tens of millions of dollars to Morocco so that Moroccan forces would prevent people from reaching the fence. It was steel in the front and money in the back. And that worked. But look at this security camera footage from the Tarajal border post itself. Spanish soldiers, armed, watching a continuous flow of people crossing through an open gate. Contrary to what many think, they are not refusing to act. The reality is that they can't do anything. Because weeks earlier, with hardly anyone noticing, the first cog had been destroyed, and the one who destroyed it was a single man. But his story doesn't start in those weeks. It begins almost 2 years earlier. November of 2024. An Algerian is intercepted at sea, along with 2 other people trying to swim to Ceuta. He is handed over to Morocco on the same day, like thousands before him. End of the story? No. Because this man did something that almost no one did. He sued Spain. And his argument was almost absurd in its simplicity. I didn't jump any fence. I didn't force any gate. I swam. What barrier exactly did I cross? He asked for 6,000 euros in compensation and the right to return. The Ceuta court ruled in his favor. The government then appealed, but the court of Andalusia ruled in his favor again. The government tried to appeal again. And on June 29, 2026, the Spanish Supreme Court made its final decision. A drone can't hold anyone back. A thermal camera can't hold anyone back. These devices only let you know that someone is there. Immediate return really only applies to those who actually try to overcome a real physical barrier. Anyone who swims ashore can't be sent back immediately. They need an individual procedure with the right to a lawyer and to request asylum. In practice, the main mechanism was dead. The door to Europe had been unlocked from the inside by a court ruling. And here's a curious detail. This man won on every point, except for the compensation. The 6,000 euros he had requested, the judges denied. The man who unlocked the most protected border in Europe didn't earn a cent for it. If you're just learning this, subscribe to the channel for more behind-the-scenes stories like this. Now, you already know why. The cause. But there's still the question of how. After all, a court ruling doesn't move 50,000 people. Someone had to spread the news. And, in fact, it spread in the worst possible way. And, on social media, that decision turned into something else. The message that the border is legally open spread quickly, a twisted, oversimplified translation that went viral. Anonymous accounts started posting daily videos in the same format. A soaked young man kissing the sand of Ceuta, complete with epic music and a heroic caption. And each video was a manual in disguise. The starting point, the route, the currents. There were even instructions like this. Anyone who can't swim, if they're underage, should use a float. On the other hand, young people quit their jobs and hit the road. Some left Casablanca, 400 kilometers from there, guided only by what they saw on their cell phones. The images from those days show open bed trucks packed with young men standing, waving, and laughing on their way to the border. And in one of those videos, the text written over the image sums it all up. The road is difficult, but the dream is worth it. The Guardia Civil Agents Association publicly warned that this would happen. With the new rule, more people would lose their lives at sea. In July alone, even before the big crossing, 8 victims were found on the beaches. The trickle turned into a line. 1,500, 2,000 people in 10 days. And the Spanish government watched. But there's still one piece missing, because there was a second lock on that door. Remember? The paid doorman. Because stop to think about what was happening here. Tens of thousands of people were moving across northern Morocco, gathering on the coast, entering the water, and heading out to sea. And do you know what question all of Spain was asking? Where was Morocco? And this is where the story gets really strange. Look at these dates. On July 20th, the head of the Spanish government visits Algeria. The great regional rival of Morocco, the first visit in 4 years. 10 days later, the border explodes, and it explodes precisely on July 30th. Throne Day, the most sacred date on the Moroccan political calendar. The 27th anniversary of the king's reign. Could that be a coincidence? And there's more. In 2021, at the height of a diplomatic dispute, Morocco loosened its border controls. Thousands entered Ceuta in 2 days, and the whole world saw it as retaliation. It wouldn't be the first time. And the images now show trucks packed full heading toward the border. There was even a Spaniard calling this a march orchestrated by the king. But keep that accusation in mind, because the other side also had cards to play too. Moroccan forces faced crowds at the border night after night. And the Moroccan press responded to the suspicion with another one. The messaging group that organized the crossing, with a set meeting point and time, was run from an Algerian phone number. So take a look at the board we have here. On one side, we have the Spanish government blaming human trafficking networks. Some Spaniards suspect Morocco. Meanwhile, Morocco suspects Algeria. And no one can prove anything. The only certainty is the outcome. The crowd came in. And then, Ceuta became a different city. An army armored vehicle in the square in front of the mosque, with a soldier positioned at the turret's weapon while locals in flip-flops walk by. Supermarkets with barred gates, with police at the door to protect the stores. Early mornings of turmoil, reports of vehicles on fire and businesses being broken into, streets covered in debris. The reception center for unaccompanied minors operating at 1,600% capacity. I'm not mistaken here. 1,600%. When Pedro Sanchez, the head of the Spanish government, got out of the car in the city, he was greeted with boos and shouts of "Enough!"
I would like to make 2 preliminary points.
And at the podium, he chose words that a European leader almost never uses. What happened was an attack, a violation of the territorial integrity of Spain. It was a strong speech.
Ceuta is a Spanish city, and what happened yesterday deserves all our disapproval, all our condemnation.
But there was a problem that still hadn't been solved. How do you send back 50,000 people if the Supreme Court itself had just banned the immediate return of those who arrive by sea? And the answer came in less than 48 hours. A lightning-fast agreement with Morocco. Buses were mobilized, convoys, gates opened in the opposite direction. And in the official statement, the Spanish government announced that more than 48,000 people had already voluntarily returned to Morocco. And pay attention to this word, voluntarily. Because voluntary return is not deportation, and what isn't deportation, the ruling doesn't prohibit. The state that lost to a swimmer in court decided to resolve the crisis outside of it. Spain was finally able to breathe. And the truce lasted for hours, because then the rest of the continent reacted, and the crisis changed in scale. Italy did something very rare between 2 founding members of the European Union. It suspended free movement with Spain. Passport required on flights and ships coming from Spanish territory in the middle of summer. Finland, Denmark, and Czechia went even further. They requested the formal suspension of Spain from the Schengen area. The agreement that has supported a Europe without internal borders for decades. And 22 European governments, including Germany, signed a joint letter saying in practice that trust in the common migration policy had been broken. The Spanish government defended itself by saying that this has nothing to do with its policy of regularizing immigrants. But the wave had already crossed the Atlantic. Donald Trump pointed to the images of Ceuta and used the city in his election campaign. He said, "Remember this image." That will be us if the wrong side wins. The US State Department formally accused the Spanish government of deliberately facilitating illegal migration to Europe. And the German far right warned, the likely destination for these people is Germany. And while the politicians were arguing, Melilla, the second enclave, spent the night under clouds of tear gas with crowds pressing against the fence. Images of burning vehicles were circulating, shared as if they were from Melilla, although the location has not been confirmed. Now, add up everything that has happened so far. A €6,000 lawsuit led to the largest irregular border crossing ever recorded in a single day in the history of the European Union, to the point of shaking the Schengen area. So, many are asking themselves this. And now? Is the door still unlocked? Well, Spain's response closes this story in a way that's hard to believe. Back then, when the decision was made, the Supreme Court left a door slightly open in its own ruling. If one day there is a physical barrier in the sea, then yes, whoever tries to cross it can be sent back immediately. Because the Spanish government announced exactly that. A line of buoys in the water at Tarajal Beach marking where the border is. Think about the size of that. The final response of the Spanish state to the man who swam in is to build a fence in the ocean, and maybe that's the truth that the small city of Ceuta has exposed. Europe's border was never made of steel. It was an invisible mechanism of court rulings, agreements, and money. And now, the whole world saw how it works, and saw that it can break. The image that remains from this whole story is this: the rusty fence of the breakwater, the fog covering the sea, the patrol boats stopped on the water, and no one in the frame. The city returning to normal, according to the authorities, while the rescue teams are still retrieving victims from the sea. The buoys still don't exist. The ruling is still in effect. Melilla is still under pressure. And 22 governments are waiting for a response from the European Union. This story will still have new developments, and every new chapter will be covered here, so subscribe to the channel for upcoming updates. And answer me one thing in the comments. In your opinion, is this crisis the court's fault or the government's? Let me know what you think down below. Thank you for watching our videos. See you next time.